Okay, hi everybody. I just want to go over a few things that I think are important and that have been standing out to me recently. So first of all, we are done now with the poetry unit. You've posted your poetry essays and I have commented on all of them. So please be sure that you can see those comments on Grade Center. You'll see a rubric and I filled out that rubric and responded to some of the descriptors. So you at least have a number and in many cases also some commentary, but do check that out. The fiction unit is going to be very much the same. You're going to be writing the fiction final essay. You're going to get your essay checked by a tutor at the Writing Center. You're going to have a peer review and you're going to have, of course, my feedback. And you'll be using that for your process narrative. And again, I'm asking you to do the audio. And I know that, that's not always an easy thing to do. However, I really do find it important and I myself as a writer always read out loud, even things that I've published already. And even if I'm giving a reading, I will be changing as I go along. So I know how important it is to hear your essay or whatever writing you've produced read aloud in your own voice. And also I have to say that when I'm listening to you read out loud, I hear how you're interpreting what I'm seeing on the page. So it really is important. And I encourage you to, embrace this opportunity. All right, so we are, as I said, gearing up to write essays on one of the short stories that you've read. You will use your triple entry journals. That is now a tool in your toolbox, right? That you can go back to so that you can find, what your central claim is, your thesis, and find quotes that back that thesis up, right? And the triple entry journal, I think, keeps that very well organized for you. Okay, so quizzes. I'm noticing that some of you are just not thorough enough on your responses to your quizzes. Remember that responses should be at least 250 words, and that I do want you to quote from the text when appropriate. So remember that I'm reading this to see how much you're absorbing from, our classes and from your reading. So if you're not showing me that you're actually processing and understanding, what we're reading or what I'm asking you to do, or, looking at the videos, then you're not going to get full credit on that question. Okay. So, be sure that you're really showing me as much as possible what your learning is. Okay. So I've conferenced with a few of you and I really want others of you to reach out. I find that the, face-to-face conferencing is really important, particularly in this online class where, we don't get to talk to each other much otherwise. So, let me know. I can be very flexible around time and, can certainly accommodate you guys. So do reach out through email. All right, so the thesis, and this is, of course, the most difficult part of writing an essay. And, what you want to think of is that you're making a central claim, okay? You're making an argument that you're stating, you're giving us. Like, this is your sort of the lighthouse in, to use a metaphor, in the dark sea, right, of all the things you could possibly be talking about in terms of a work of fiction or a poem or drama. And you've already done the poem, now we're doing fiction, and then we're going to be doing drama. But the concept remains the same, right? You are laying out an argument, like, what are you seeing? What dimension of the work are you going to look at? And, there are many, many dimensions. So that's why you'll see when you write something like, the truth or, the true point that this author wants to get at, there is no true point, right? Otherwise you wouldn't write literature. It would be much more effective to write an argumentative essay about something rather than a poem or a story, or right. Literature, the whole sort of, gestalt of literature is to hold things up simultaneously. And we saw that with My Papa's Waltz, where, we understand how a boy can both love and fear and dread his parent all at the same time. It's all there held up together. And that's the beauty of what a piece of literature can do, can hold multiple realities and truths simultaneous. So, once you say something like the truth of this, or, it's like a treasure hunt and we get to the message of it, then you kind of take away all that other dimensionality from the literary piece. So definitely, want to warn you away from thinking in that respect, right? You can argue so many different sides of something that's all you're doing. You're just taking a little piece of it, saying, oh, I'm seeing it this way. I'm seeing how the quadroon boy in Desiree's Baby, relates to what happens in the end, right? I'm seeing him as a symbol. Why is he a quadroon boy? Okay, so there are multiple ways of just sort of taking off a little piece of the text and looking at how that relates to the whole, right? So I just want to go over a couple of theses that are I think, effective. And not that you've necessarily read these other two stories, you've read in Desiree's Baby, but even without having read the stories, you see how the author is giving us guidance. Okay, so here's an example. In A Worn Path, Eudora Welty creates a fictional character in Phoenix Jackson whose determination, faith, and cunning illustrate the indomitable human spirit. Okay, so she's going to look at how Phoenix Jackson sort of stands in for humans in general, and particularly the human spirit, that it cannot be dominated, right? That the human spirit is this strong, and this author is going to look at, the author of this essay is going to look at how this particular character, Phoenix Jackson, illustrates that in this short story. Okay, so you have a strong verb in here, right? Creates. Eudora Welty creates a fictional character. It also identifies the element of fiction that the writer will explore. Character, right? That's what the writer of this essay is going to be looking at, is the character and the characteristics that the writer is going to analyze and discuss: determination, faith, and cunning. So then the entire essay will be going through, having to prove that, right? Having to show us, who this character is, and why these characteristics are illustrating these particular, are illustrating determination, faith, and cunning, right? So, it gives you the guidelines for what you're looking at. You're not going to be looking at other aspects necessarily unless they are related to what you're proving here, okay? Through her warmth and earthy wit, the character of the nurse in Romeo and Juliet helps realize the tragic catastrophe at the end of the play. Okay, so if you've read Romeo and Juliet, the nurse is not a huge character, and that's also, I find, an interesting, which is why I chose this particular thesis to show you, because taking a smaller character, and again, I relate back to the quadroon boy in Desiree's Baby, can be an interesting way into a text, right? So seemingly a small character, seemingly maybe doesn't have a huge role, or not, is a flat character. We don't get a whole bunch about that person, and yet affects or symbolizes something within the larger work. So that can be an interesting way into it. Remember too to look for contrasts. The tension of literature lives in the contrast. So the things that don't quite go together, right? That don't quite make sense. That, we had this very happy marriage. It's so happy at the beginning. Desiree's so enthralled with Armand, and at the end, it's so tragic. So, how do you get from A to Z, right? And how much does that maybe have to do with Armand's willingness to just judge people and situations on the very surface level, and how toxic that is, to his situation, right? In Desiree's Baby, we see that racism destroys our humanity towards each other, metaphorically murdering both the judged and the judge. Okay. So, and then look, there's a period missing there. So in Desiree's Baby, right, we see that racism destroys our humanity towards each other. So, so this person's going to argue in this essay that racism destroys the way in which we can sort of care for, love each other, right? Our humanity. Metaphorically, so on a metaphorical level, not necessarily truly, but metaphorically, murdering both the person who is judged, so both the victim of racism, as well as the person who is perpetrating racism. And Armand, of course, is the symbol for that judge, right? Who then in the end becomes judged, because we are so interrelated that it is impossible actually to separate ourselves out and to say, you know, this group of people is bad, this group of people is good. That in Desiree's baby, what we're beginning to understand is that there is no separation, that, you know, that that separation is not simple, or clear cut, or even possible. And that when we begin to do that, we actually murder our humanity. So I think, you know, here we have, it's again, broad enough to write an essay that, you know, that really sort of unpacks that argument, but narrow enough so that it's not all over the place, right? So that, because if your argument's too large, right, you're gonna, you know, either write a book or it's just gonna be, you're gonna just touch things on a superficial level. You have to have enough, it has to be narrow enough so that you can actually write the 3 to 4 page essay that you guys are setting out to write. Okay. But it has to be broad enough so that you can write that 3 to 4 page essay, because if you can just prove it in a paragraph, whatever you're arguing, then obviously that's not going to work. Okay. So, so that's what I want to, you know, just sort of go over with you guys today. Again, I would really appreciate if you would reach out to me so we can talk more about your specific essay and any questions that you have. And, you know, I'm looking forward to reading your next drafts on this.